In other news, terrorists and rebels occupying the enclave of Eastern Ghouta just outside the capital Damascus have reportedly started fighting each other. That's according to the Russian Reconciliation Centre for Syria. It says the infighting began after one of the rebel groups was urged to separate from al-Nusra terrorists in exchange for negotiations on conditions for their safe passage out of the war-ravaged area. Earlier, the Reconciliation Centre struck a deal with some rebels, which allowed 52 civilians, half of them children, to safely leave the enclave through a humanitarian corridor. It's the first time civilians have been able to use the corridor there as intended. Previously, they were either fired at by militants or resorted to using a passing aid convoy as cover. And this is what the situation there looks like now. The Syrian government has regained a large portion of Eastern Ghouta, as you can see, essentially isolating the militants into 3 separate pockets. And civilians who lived in these territories under militant rule are now sharing their stories too. RT's Igor Zhidanov has more now on the deal that allowed dozens of civilians to leave the fighting.
Militants in control of the area have let them out almost 2 weeks after Russia and Syria opened humanitarian corridors. Not an act of goodwill on behalf of the rebel factions, but part of a deal. Russia and Syria let some anti-government fighters safely flee with their families, and in exchange, fighters in Ghouta would allow 50 civilians to leave the war zone as well.
We've been suffering horribly for 7 years. We all stayed neutral in Misraba, but we couldn't leave, couldn't do anything. They didn't let us leave, controlled and put pressure on us. We haven't seen any of the aid sent to us. We haven't seen any money, nothing. They took everything from us.
Militants treat civilians in East Ghouta as a bargaining chip, making sure that if anyone flees, they do it on the fighters' terms. The gloves were off from the start. The Russian Defense Ministry has reported that the paths to safety were shelled almost religiously, precisely to prevent anyone from fleeing to Damascus, trying to escape the hellfire between the government forces and militant groups, whose fighters far too often side with terrorists.
You have all sorts of needs inside Ghouta. Today, the priority remains medical help that we need to reach with people inside Ghouta, and food aid as well.
كان في عالم كثير بدها تطلع، ما خلونا نطلع أبداً.
المدنيين لا أكل ولا شرب ولا بتسترجي تحكي رأيك ما بتسترجي تحكي، لأنه بس تحكي رأيك تقولي نحن بدنا نطلع على الشام بيجي بيعتقلك. مشكلين من كل غوطة دمشق مسلحين.
وقديش تقريبا في مدنيين جوا؟
في أكثر من 25 ألف.
وكله بده يطلع؟
كله بده يطلع.
Political analyst Talib Ibrahim says the infighting between militants in Eastern Ghouta is caused by the lack of choice they have amid Syria's anti-terror operation there.
I think because of the pressure, of the military pressure of the Syrian army, which could size about 60% of the total area of the occupied territories of the Eastern Ghouta, I think that pressure pushed those militants to look for other choices. One of these choices is to go out of Ghouta to Idlib, or some of them want to surrender because there's an amnesty decree released by President Assad for those militants who want to stop fighting the state. So this kind of disagreement, and because of the narrow range of choices for those militants, at this point the fighting began to take place between those militants.